All right, I'm going to get into the modes a little bit here, and I'm trying to stay away from music theory as much as I can. So I'm going to try to avoid those kinds of terms. Anything that is a music theory term, and deal more in just the practical application part of it. So there may be a little bit of it creeps in there, but so essentially we'll start working with the C major scale. And the way you make a C major chord is you use the 1, the 3, and the 5. If you think of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and give those numbers, the 1, the 3, and the 5 make a major chord or triad. In practical application, if you look at a keyboard, it's this white key, skip a white key, that white key, skip a white key, and that white key. And that pattern is, it has to do with the black keys in the semitones and the actual pattern of the scale, which I'll get into in just a little bit. So if I were going to play the second chord in a C major key, I would move everything to the start note of D. So I would move this note up to here, and then I would skip a white key and move this note to that one, and then skip a white key and move it up to that one. And now I have the second chord of a C major, which is D minor. And I can continue up the process. If I go to the next one, it's an E. If I hold my cursor mouse there, you can see it, E shows up. So that's an E. So if I move the first note up to the E, which is the next white key, then I go, I'm on this white key, I skip one, so I would put this on the next white key, and then skip a key and go to the next one. And now I have an E minor. So the chords go C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished, and then C. And almost never do we have to deal with the D diminished when we're writing a song. I mean, it's not to say we can't, but many, many good songs are written without ever using a diminished chord. So how does this all work? So let's get this back to a C major first. So we'll put that back on the root note C, and then we'll skip a white key, and that would be that note, which is an E, and then we'll skip a key, and that'll make it a G. Yeah, so we skip a key, that one, skip a key, that one. I missed it by one over here. Now I have a C major. Now I'll go over to my melody instrument, and we'll start with a C, and let's make it about that long. Okay, so a C major scale is step, step, half step, 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 half step. So if we go step, step, and that would be 2 semitones or 2 half tones is a step. So we'd skip one and then let's put that in the center there, and I'll get these notes the right size. So step, step would be here, and then half step would be here, then step, 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 half step. So to listen, we have that's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay. Now let's play that over the C major chord, and we have a C major scale. Okay, so now we're going to try moving to the second chord in the C major key of C major. So we'll go back to the chords here. We're going to move it to the next white key, and then every other key. So that we're on this key, it would be this one, and then skip one, this one, and that should make a D minor. Now let's hear the C major across the D minor. sounds pretty good. It's because the scale is in C major and so is D minor. It's part of C major. But when you're talking about modes, all that really means is you're going to use a different portion of the C major scale. So if you're learning the modes, do you need to learn a bunch of scales? No, it's a C major scale, and you just start and stop in different places. So let's go to the scale here, and we're just going to extend this up because we're going to start with a D. So this is a C, and we've got a C, but we're going to end on a D and start on a D. So let's make this C one octave up to a D and move it in place. Now we're going to move the whole thing over. Now by playing the same scale, I just want you to notice here, instead of going step, step, half step, we're going step, half step, 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 half step, step. So it's different as far as where the half steps are, even though in practicality we're playing the same scale. We're just starting on D and ending on D. Now let's take a listen to that. That sounds pretty doggone good. So all we did was we changed to the second chord and started on the second note and ended on the second note of the C major scale. Let's try that again in E minor. So we're going to move the root note to the next white key, which is E. Now we're going to skip a white key, and that will make it that one, which is a G. And then we're going to skip a white key, makes it a B. And we have an E minor. Now let's go back to the melody, and let's do the same thing. Let's take the root note and move it to the next note, which will be an E, but we'll do an octave up. And move it over here. And then move the whole thing over to the starting point. Now we have the C major scale starting on the third note and ending on the third note, and it's across an E minor chord, which is the third chord of the C major key. So here we go. I think that sounds pretty sweet. So let's go a little further. Let's do the next one up, which would be one white key up with the root note, and then skip to that one. So it would be there. And then we're going to skip a white key to that one, which would be here. And we have major mode, and the root is F. So we have an F major. Now let's go to the scale. Let's do the same thing. We're going to take this E, we're going to make it the next note up, which is an F. We're going to go up one octave and F, and then put it at the end of the run and move the whole run over so that it starts on the first beat. Now we have the C major scale shifted by, whatever we're on the fourth chord, which is F. Now let's see how the C major scale sounds across an F chord, starting with an F note. Let's see, keep testing this theory out. go to the next white key, which would be here, and that happens to be a G, so we're going to skip a key, and that, or white key, that would make it a B. Skip a white key, make it a D, so, and we have major sound, and it's a G chord. Now let's go back to the scale. This is going to become the second note, which is a G, so we're going to move this up to a G, put it to the end, and then move the whole scale over. If you notice, I have not changed where the intervals are. I've only started and stopped in different places, which effectively moves the half step places in the scale. So let's listen to this. Now this is the C major scale played across a G major. You can hear it sounds really good. It has a little different sound than a C major scale played over a C major, and that's kind of why they give it names and modes, is because the sound takes on a flavor or a color. So while we're still playing the C major scale, we're starting and stopping in different places. It is in reality a different scale, but from a working standpoint, you're playing the same notes. Okay, so now let's do that again. We'll go up to the starting note. This time will be an A. And then we're going to skip a white key. Then we're going to skip a white key. And we have a minor sound, and we have an A chord, so it's an A minor. Now we'll go back to the melody. We're going to change this G to an A and move it over to the end. Okay, and now we're going to move the whole thing over so it starts on the 1. And now let's listen to the C major scale played across an A minor. And this would be the, I believe, the Aeolian mode, or it's what we commonly use as a minor mode. It happens to be the relative minor of C major. But again, we're using the same notes as the C major scale. Okay, so let's go one more step up, which would be the very last one before coming back to a C. We're going to go up to the next white key, which would make it a B. Then we're going to skip a white key and skip a white key, which would make it that one. And we would have a B, and I believe it's diminished. It's a little different sound. Now let's go back to the scale. We're going to make this a B as the ending note. So B, and then to the end, and move the whole scale over to the start, and let's play that. Now this is a diminished, B diminished, using the notes of a C major scale. Okay, so what I've showed there is that the modes, which gives a real stumbling for a lot of people, the modes are really just a C major scale applied across the chords of a C major key, and you just simply start with a different note in that C major note group. You start with a different note and end on that same note, effectively moving the chain, one end linked to the other end of the chain, and you just keep moving up. So If a guy was going to play D Dorian, he would play a C major scale starting on D and ending on a D. So how does this apply where the rubber meets the road? So let's go back to the chords here, and let's go to the second chord, D minor. And now we're starting on a D, so D, skip a key, would be here, which is right. And then skip a key would be here, and we have a D minor. Okay. Whoops, that's not stopping like it's supposed to. Here we go. So let's take this chord and let's pick another chord from the pattern. Let's say we're going to do D minor, and we'll go to E minor, F. Let's go to an F because F is one of the chords. So how do we make an F chord? F, skip a key, skip a key, and let's hear how that sounds looping it. A minor, or from the C major group, or the key. Let's go back to a C. So C, and then we skip a key, which would be an E, and we skip a key, which would be a G. Now let's hear that. So we're playing in D minor, but really what we're doing is we're playing D Dorian in the C major scale, and that gets all complicated. But the point is here, we've made a chord progression using the chords in the key of C, and we're emphasizing the D minor. So let's go to the scale part, and let's do a C major scale. Let's take this out of here. We're going to go back to the C major, so C, and then we're going to do a D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now we're going to start on E, D and end on D, so let's make this a D. And then we want to move the whole thing over to start on the main. And then I want this to repeat again, so let's just, for giggles, let's just make it go right back down. Just enough notes to fill it in, I guess. Okay, so let's hear what that is. So in theory, we're playing a C major scale, or the notes of a C major scale, starting on D, ending on D, ascending and descending. Let's see how it sounds across that chord progression. Oops, I think I've got something muted here. Let me unmute that and try it again. Here we go. it doesn't sound too doggone bad. So just for giggles, I'm going to pick a few notes and just change what they are, but I'm going to stay in that same scale, that same grouping of notes, if you will. Now I've just changed some around at random without even hearing them or anything. Now let's see what it sounds like when I play that. So the question becomes, how does this relate to playing Native American flute, for example? Pretty easy on a chromatic instrument like a guitar or a piano or any instrument where you can play, all the half tones all the way up. But the Native American flute isn't really tuned that way. But if you can pick a flute made in the key that has all of the notes of a C major scale, then you can play that flute for any chord that's emphasized in the key of C. In other words, you can do a D minor F C play using an A minor flute by starting on the D note of the C major scale. I have several A minor flutes, and I can play a full C major scale using my A minor flute. So that in theory I can do what I just did with the piano roll here. If they emphasize D minor and they're using the chords of C major, I should be able to take that A minor flute and play in the Dorian mode in D and come out with a workable solution. So obviously for the key of G major, or the key of G, the chords would be different. There's an F sharp in there. And so it's not the same. So you would have to take whatever works for C major, the key of C major. You'd have to work it out. What is the G major scale? And then find the flute that can play the G major scale. And then the same rules would apply for any chord that's based out of a G major scale. So I hope all that made sense. It stands to reason if the relative minor of C can play a full C major scale, then the relative minor of G, which is E minor, should be able to play the full G major scale. And D, for instance, a B minor is the relative minor, a B minor flute that should be able to play all of the notes of a D major scale. So whatever key they're working in will determine what flute you choose, but then you can play that same flute for any chord progression built from that key. So like if you went D minor, E minor, F, C, D minor, E minor, F, C, you could use an A minor flute. And it would work if you started, if D minor is the emphasized chord, you could start with your D Dorian, or the second note of the scale, and work your way up and down the scale playing your melodies. So, I haven't actually recorded music doing this yet, but I can find the C major scale, and if it works on a piano, it'll work on any instrument, or any two instruments, one playing chords and one playing melodies. So interesting stuff when you start looking at music and how it's put together and all the relationships. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you find some of the information useful. I'm assuming since I did actual demonstrations that it's accurate. I wish you well on your musical journey and specifically on the Native American flute. Thanks.